Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update. The afternoon update with Lynlee Foo.
That's right, you're with me, Lynlee, this Wednesday afternoon. How are you doing today? And think about the last time you used Google. Maybe you were checking where to grab lunch or looking up a quick fact. For years, that was the way search worked. You asked and you got an answer. But today, it feels different, doesn't it? Sometimes you're shown things you didn't even know you were looking for, whether it's a product, a trend, or even a news story. That's because search has evolved into something bigger, a discovery engine powered by AI. And for businesses, that changes the rules of the game. It's no longer just about being searchable. It's about being discoverable in a personalized, AI-driven world. So how should companies respond? Joining me today to unpack this is Ben King, Managing Director of Google Singapore. Welcome to Money FM 89.3.
Thank you for having me, Lynlee. It's wonderful to be on Money FM again.
To start us off, Ben, how do you think AI has transformed the way people experience search and discovery online? Just to get your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Look, it's evolving very quickly. Obviously, technological advancements have moved quickly, and as a result of that, search is following suit. You know, it's being driven, this shift, by both an existing understanding of human curiosity, but then also that coming together with the power of AI. It's evolving for us, if I was to put it simply, from information to intelligence. So, you know, I heard your intro just now. You certainly talked about that sort of old world and into the new world. The old world really looked like sort of keywords that moved to clicks clicks on blue links, and then a user having to piece together a lot of those answers. Mm-hmm. That's now moved to, you know, far more contextualized queries and the capability to provide much more personalized answers. So to give a simple example, maybe in the past somebody might type in bank credit card. The query now, it looks very different. It might look like, what is a credit card that gives me the best miles across XYZ airline? And we need to, you know, really respond to that in a meaningful way with advanced or improved features. And some of those features that are rolling out, things like AI overviews, which many Singaporeans have probably accessed already. Over 2 billion people are actually using that globally. Mm-hmm. Now the most widely used Gen AI product in the entire world. And just last week we launched AI Mode, which is a super exciting advancement. It's a complete reimagining of the search experience where people can explore, dig deeper by asking, you know, open-ended questions, follow-up questions that previously just would not have been possible. And early testers are suggesting that in AI Mode, people are asking much longer queries, 2 or 3 times the length of traditional searches. So a lot happening, a lot of advancements, and people are really engaging in a meaningful way. We're seeing 5 trillion searches running through Google annually, and that's growing. Contrary to maybe what some people think, the search volume, the query volume is indeed growing in this new world.
Wow, exciting stuff, Ben. I think this makes the experience more intuitive for consumers, definitely, and also opens up new ways for businesses to connect with them. So it's less about looking up and more about being surfaced at the right time, I suppose? Yeah,
well, I think being surfaced at the right time has always been sort of core to how we think about search, you know, really meeting user intent. But what is happening is an evolution of how that intent is expressed, and there's an evolution of how users are really searching for and engaging in information. So as businesses start to think about how they respond, that will require some shifts in the way that they actually deploy, you know, their marketing activity, how they think about, you know, their overall approach to engaging with Google. The reality is that we also need to respond with products that are powered by AI to help businesses tap in, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we just launched recently AI Max for Search. It's a way that a business can simply opt in all of their search campaigns that will allow them to then get auto exposure to these new and innovative, you know, features within the search results page. Not only the innovations that have taken shape already, but also the innovations that will happen in time. So as an example, as AI Overviews has ads included, they'll get auto exposure to that by just opting into this particular search feature. And look, we've been thinking about various different campaign types to help advertisers plug in beyond search as well. So it's not just about search, things like PMax and Demand Gen. They don't need to go into the naming conventions so much. It's more about just allowing businesses to access a range of other platforms beyond search that helps them meet users where they are and have a meaningful interaction with them as they're working through their discovery and consideration phase.
Ben, with this launch, how should companies rethink their digital strategies?
Look, it's a wonderful question. I think, you know, while the world is changing rapidly, many core principles actually remain very consistent. You know, I would say that it's really important not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. And to give you a really clear example of what I mean, you know, our SEO guidance So our search engine optimization guidance, it remains largely the same from the old world to the new. You know, businesses should help people find outstanding original content that adds unique value. So the things that were true before, they are true now. And to explain a little bit more, you know, we want businesses to focus on unique and valuable content for people, you know, multimodal content that people will find helpful and satisfying, and support your text content with, as I said, multi-modality of content, high-quality images, high-quality videos. So that's number one. Number two would be, you know, make sure your information is accessible, your content is accessible. Make sure your pages meet the technical requirements of Google search so that we can find them, we can crawl them, we can index them and consider them to show in our results. But then also think about sort of understanding the full value of visits to your site. You know, focus on how well users get information and finish tasks, not just on clicks. So if I think about what that means, you know, there's a lot that remains consistent. There's a few things that will tweak, certainly around the edges. Multimodality is going to be incredibly important, as an example, or much more important. There's the same sort of principle beyond SEO as well with regard to paid search. You know, many things remain consistent, but you need to balance that consistency with a really strong appetite to test and pilot and really, open up time, energy, and resources to make sure that those tests and pilots are taking shape in real time so that you can take advantage of the evolutions and innovations that are coming down the pipe thick and fast.
All about meeting customers where they are, I think, and sometimes before they know they're ready to buy. But Ben, do you think companies are underutilizing search data as a tool for product development or even customer engagement?
Well, look, certainly there's going to be some businesses that are underutilizing. Absolutely. What I would say about Singapore in general is that the adoption of search has been, pretty strong over a number of years. I think, obviously larger businesses and digital native businesses tend to adopt things a little bit quicker. We've got, much more headroom in the SME space, and I actually see some of the things that are happening at the moment as a leapfrog potential for SMEs. But, it's also a little bit dual speed across large businesses as well. I think, there's core search adoption and there's adoption of these new and innovative features that I talked about before. Some companies and some industries are going to be a little bit more suited to moving quicker. So generally those companies are living in the digital world. E-commerce is an example, online travel aggregators, they're moving very quickly. More legacy businesses, traditional banking, insurance, offline retail, it usually takes a little bit longer. But that said, I do think it's less about first mover and more about building fundamentals for the mid to long term. That's where the most success will be enjoyed. But there's some wonderful examples of great results within the digital native space. Shopee, as an example, used AI Max to really expand its user base. They attained double the conversions at 49%. Their ROI. Grab has seen, really wonderful results in optimizing for engagement around their higher value user base. So there's wonderful examples coming through. But as I said, it'll be really about building the fundamentals for the mid to long term. And, the real success will be built on the back of that.
You mentioned SMEs earlier, so I'm just curious to know, how do you think about them? How does Google ensure that SMEs don't get crowded out by bigger brands when results are becoming more personalized?
Well, it's a wonderful question. We care very deeply about the SME space, but what I would say is, well, I take slightly a different view. I actually see, as I said before, it's a leapfrog moment for them. There's incredible opportunities for SMEs to take very meaningful strides that maybe were very difficult in the past. You just don't need the in-house skills across many different areas that maybe you required in, the old world. AI, if you just think about marketing, it's integrated into every step of the marketing process, from generating creative assets, running campaigns with smart bidding and optimization, and even AI-powered reporting, data analytics and analysis. That is all becoming quite democratized, which is incredibly exciting for a small business owner. Let's just use one example around creative. Startups and SMEs, maybe they didn't have the big budgets that could generate quality ads in the past. That's now no longer the case. They can test what works. They can really develop great creative with less effort. And this is coming through tools like our video and image generation tools like VO3 and Imagen, which were launched just this year. As I said before, they're democratizing things, democratizing the ability to build great creative, and also helping businesses think about how they can sort of not only create a wide range of quality visuals, but think about personalization at scale as well. So I think it's a very exciting time for small businesses. Clearly, it will take some know-how and some learning, within those companies to really adopt and to drive forward their marketing and AI-driven marketing agenda. But I do feel like there is an opportunity to leapfrog here.
Okay, so you think it's an opportunity and this actually levels the playing field?
Yeah, I think there's just a real democratization across all aspects of the marketing value chain.
Okay. Ben, which industries here in Singapore are adapting well to this discovery-led environment?
Well, yeah, so I mentioned a little bit about this before. I think there are companies that are more naturally lent towards very rapid adoption. You know, I talked about the digital natives, the e-commerce platforms,
right.
the online travel aggregators, also the aggregators within various different, other sectors, aggregators in finance as an example. The traditional companies are moving a little bit slower. This is, by the way, there's always going to be, anomalies within each of the different sectors. I'm trying to generalize a little bit. But as I said before, it's not so much about first mover. It's more about building those foundations and gaining learnings now to understand consumer trends, understand how this will sort of evolve for your particular business, and over time building, a really strong mid to long-term strategy. That will be where the real game is either won or lost.
Okay. Some companies worry about constantly chasing algorithm changes. So do you think it's sustainable to keep adapting, or should they focus on building long-term resilience?
Well, yeah, so I wouldn't think about it so much in terms of an algorithm change or anything like that. I think that what we're seeing is that there's new features and new products that are being launched all the time, right? So with this technological advancement that we're seeing within Gen AI, we've been able to launch things like AI overviews, AI mode, but not just that, lens and circle to search. These various different innovations have come into play. It's not so much algorithmic. It's more about how do you then plug into this shift in the way that consumers and users are engaging with information. And, the reality is that we are trying to follow suit with our ad products as well to try and allow businesses to plug into these various different opportunities in real time and do it in an automated and AI-driven fashion. So I think it is, less about thinking algorithm, more about how do you adopt into ad products that, allow real-time access to new and evolving products and features that are rolling out in real time.
Sounds like the basics still matter, even in an AI-driven world.
Indeed.
Okay, Ben, I'd like to know if you have any examples of companies that have successfully leveraged AI-powered discovery to drive growth.
Oh, yeah, so I actually just mentioned a couple before. I mentioned Shopee, and I've given one example about how they've deployed AI Max, but, beyond that one example, where they've actually, expanded their user base, attained double the conversions at 49% better ROI, they're deploying AI across the majority of their marketing activity. Grab is another wonderful example or use case around deploying AI across the majority of what they're doing from a marketing perspective. Lazada is another really great example of a digital native that it's adopting, in a really meaningful way. So there's many, many examples within the digital native space. Within the traditional sectors, there's many banks that are now starting to make meaningful progress. DBS comes to mind. There's a range of different other international banking players that are operating around the region that are doing really wonderful things. Amex is an example. So, look, there's a lot of examples. And, the reality is that the examples will only expand in number because the one thing that is just absolutely unanimous is that all business owners are seeing this as an opportunity, all the business owners that I speak to, most certainly, and they see it as an imperative, something they really need to invest in over time. So, look, I don't see this slowing down in any way whatsoever. I think we've seen some of the first movers really start to garner and deliver really wonderful results. The success cases will only expand over time.
Okay, very quickly, Ben, how does consumer behaviour in Singapore compare with other markets in Southeast Asia when it comes to search and discovery?
Well, look, the reality is that Singapore has been highly advanced as it relates to digital adoption and also the sophistication of the digital activity for some time. And that is, very much applicable to the search space as well. That said, there are always nuances based on the various different markets in which we operate. As an example, in some markets around Southeast Asia, there's much more of a voice-driven, sort of method of searching, whereas in Singapore it is, still somewhat anchored into the text-based method of searching. So we do have various different nuances. What I would say is that this is a highly sophisticated country with highly sophisticated digital capability, connection, speed of access. And so, we tend to see more, very, very advanced behaviours as it relates to how people engage, not only with digital content, but then also how they make their way through into sort of transacting and buying and actually acting on the various stages of consideration and discovery. All
right. Thank you very much, Ben. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you for sharing those insights.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me on.
Ben King, Managing Director of Google Singapore, on how AI is reshaping search into a discovery engine and what it means for businesses in Singapore and beyond. And you've been listening to Industry Insight.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.